This is a dramatized story inspired by real debt situations. For educational and entertainment purposes only. Not legal or financial advice.
$78,000. That's what arrived in the mail on a Tuesday morning in March. Not a credit card statement, not a mortgage notice, a hospital bill. For 3 days in the ICU. And at 43 years old, working as a registered nurse in suburban Columbus, Ohio, I stood in my kitchen in scrubs I hadn't changed out of yet, reading a number that made my hands go cold. My name is Dana, and this is the story of how one medical emergency turned my entire life inside out. I want you to understand something before we go any further. I knew how hospitals worked. I was on the other side of that bed every single day. I held patients' hands when the doctor delivered bad news. I explained insurance forms to terrified families. I thought I understood the system. I didn't understand anything. Let me take you back to October, 8 months before that bill arrived. I was 42 at the time, single. My divorce had finalized 2 years earlier, and I was raising my daughter, Mia, who was 9, mostly on my own. My ex-husband Marcus contributed when he could, but he'd had his own financial setbacks, and I'd learned not to count on that money showing up consistently. I was pulling in about $64,000 a year as a floor nurse at a mid-size hospital. Not rich, not struggling. Or so I thought. I had a mortgage of $1,340 a month on a 3-bedroom house in a decent school district because Mia deserved stability. I had a car payment of $387 on a Honda I'd bought when I thought my life was going in a different direction. I had about $11,200 in credit card debt spread across 2 cards, one Chase, one Discover, from the divorce year when everything fell apart the first time, and I had $19,500 left on my student loans from nursing school on an income-based repayment plan. On paper, I was hanging on. Some months I even had a little left over. Then, October 14th happened. I was working a double shift. 12 hours in, I started feeling chest tightness. I told myself it was stress. I told myself I was just tired. I told myself what every healthcare worker tells themselves, that it's nothing, that I'd feel better after sleep, that I didn't have time to be sick. A colleague named Janet found me in the break room at 2 a.m., gray-faced, sweating through my scrubs. She didn't ask me if I was okay. She just called for a wheelchair. 3 days later, I woke up in the cardiac ICU of the very hospital where I worked. Stress-induced cardiomyopathy. Broken heart syndrome, which is a real diagnosis, not a metaphor, though I thought grimly that it was both. My heart had temporarily weakened under sustained physical and emotional stress. I was stable. I was going to be okay. And then, 5 months later, the bill came. $78,340. My insurance, the insurance I paid $287 a month for, the insurance I had specifically chosen because it covered cardiac events, had denied the claim. Their determination, the admission had not been pre-authorized and did not meet criteria for inpatient medical necessity under their guidelines. I could appeal, the letter said. I had 60 days. I stood there in my kitchen reading that letter until Mia came downstairs and asked me why I looked like a ghost. "Nothing, baby," I said. "Go eat your cereal." I sat down at my kitchen table that night after she went to bed, and I laid out everything, every bill, every account, every number I'd been managing to keep in motion. Mortgage, $1,340 a month. Car payment, $387. Credit cards, minimum payments totaling $310 a month. Chase at $190, Discover at $120. Student loans, $214 a month. Utilities, groceries, Mia's school expenses, roughly $1,800. Total monthly obligations, just over $3,350. My take-home after taxes and insurance premiums, $3,390. That left me $540 a month. That was the cushion. That was everything. Every emergency, every car repair, every time Mia needed new shoes or her dental copay. And now there was a $78,340 bill sitting on top of all of it. I filed the insurance appeal. I wrote a 7-page letter. I got my cardiologist to submit documentation. I called the insurance company 11 times in 6 weeks. I was transferred to 4 different departments. I was told the appeal was under review. I was told to be patient. I was told, finally, in December, that my appeal had been denied. The claim remained uncovered. The hospital's billing department called me in January. Ms. Dana, we want to work with you on this. We do have a financial assistance program. You may qualify for a reduction. I filled out the financial assistance application. 3 weeks later, they came back with an offer, a 20% reduction, bringing the balance to 60,672 hours. They could set me up on a payment plan. $850 a month for 6 years. $850 a month. I sat with that number for a long time. I didn't have $850 a month. I had $540 total in breathing room, and that was only if nothing else went wrong. I said I'd think about it. I want to tell you about the months that followed because I need you to understand what this kind of debt does to a person who is already treading water. I started lying to myself first. That's always how it starts. I told myself I'd figure it out. I told myself the hospital would negotiate further. I told myself maybe I could pick up more overtime shifts. I worked 3 extra shifts in February. I was so exhausted of that month that I made a medication documentation error at work. Caught before it reached a patient, thank God. But it shook me to my core. A tired nurse is a dangerous nurse. I knew that. I'd always known that. I stopped opening the mail in March. I'm not proud of that. I'd set the envelopes on the corner of the kitchen counter, face down, and I'd walk past them every single day, and I'd tell myself I'd open them tomorrow. Tomorrow became a week became a month. By April, there was a stack of maybe 30 envelopes that I had not opened. The phone calls started in February. The hospital had sent the account to a collection agency. Not the full amount, just a portion, about $12,000. While the rest was still technically in negotiation. I didn't know they could do that simultaneously. I learned later that many hospitals can and do. The collection agency called my cell phone. They called twice a day, sometimes 3 times. I stopped answering numbers I didn't recognize. Then they called the nursing station at work. My charge nurse, a woman named Brenda, who had known me for 6 years, came to find me mid-shift. Dana. There's a collections call for you at the desk. Again. The look on her face, professional, neutral. But I saw it. I saw what she was working hard not to let show. I wanted to disappear through the floor. I told Mia we were going to have a low-spend spring. I reframed everything. We weren't struggling. We were being intentional. We made meals at home. We skipped her school's spring pictures. I told her the camera on my phone was just as good. She believed me. She's 10 now. She believed me. But Mia's perceptive in the way that children of single parents often become perceptive. Too early, too finely tuned. She started making her own lunch without being asked. She stopped asking for things. One night I found her crying quietly in her room, and when I asked what was wrong, she said, "I don't want us to lose the house, Mom." She was 9 years old. I don't know where she'd heard that. Maybe she'd overheard a phone call. Maybe she'd just felt it. That ambient dread that fills a house when money is terrifying. I held her for a long time, and I told her we were going to be okay, and I did not know if that was true. That was the moment I understood I could not keep doing what I was doing. But before I found my way forward, I made every wrong move first. In March, I transferred $8,000 of the Chase credit card balance to a new card with a 0% introductory APR. 18 months, no interest. It sounded like relief. What I didn't account for was the 3% balance transfer fee I paid up front and the reality that in 18 months, if that balance wasn't gone, the rate would jump to 24, 99%. I'd just delayed the problem and added to it. In April, I took out a payday loan, $600, to cover a car repair I couldn't defer. The fee was $90 for a 2-week loan. Annualized, that's a 391% interest rate. I knew that. I'd seen pamphlets in the hospital waiting room warning patients about exactly this. I took the loan anyway because the alternative was not having a car, and without a car, I couldn't get to work. In May, I seriously considered withdrawing from my 401k. I had about $31,000 in there, 12 years of contributions and employer matching. I called the plan administrator. They walked me through the numbers, a 10% early withdrawal penalty plus federal and state taxes withheld. I would have received maybe $20,000 of that $31,000, and I would have burned 12 years of retirement savings to make a partial dent in a debt that was still growing. I didn't do it, but I came terrifyingly close. What stopped me was a coworker, a traveling nurse named Raymond who'd been on our floor for about 4 months. I didn't know him well, but one evening on a break, one of those 2 a.m. moments when night shift nurses have the kind of conversations you don't have in daylight, I said, more to the air than to him, that I didn't know how people got out from under medical debt. He looked at me for a moment. "How bad is it?" he asked. I told him. I told him the number. $78,000. I hadn't said it out loud to anyone before that moment. The saying of it felt like something breaking open. He didn't flinch. He said, "Have you talked to a nonprofit credit counselor? Not a debt settlement company, a nonprofit, like NFCC affiliated. They deal with exactly this." I hadn't. I'd seen ads online for debt settlement companies. I'd almost called one. Something had stopped me. Maybe professional instinct. The same instinct that makes you check twice before administering a medication. Raymond said, "The settlement companies take a cut, and they can wreck your credit score for years. A nonprofit counselor will look at the whole picture and tell you what your actual options are. Some of it's free." That was the first useful information I'd received in 7 months. 2 weeks later, I made an appointment with a nonprofit credit counseling agency affiliated with the National Foundation for Credit Counseling, the NFCC. I drove 40 minutes on a Thursday morning, my one day off that week, and I sat across from a counselor named Patricia. I brought the stack of unopened mail, all 30-something envelopes. I put them on her desk. "I haven't opened these," I said. I couldn't. She didn't judge me. She opened them, one by one, and we built a complete picture together. Here is what the full picture looked like. The hospital bill, now with interest and fees added by the collection agency on the portion they held, approximately $64,000 remaining. Credit card balances, Chase and Discover, including the balance transfer, $14,800. Car loan, $9,200 remaining. Student loans, $18,900. Total, just over $106,000 in total liabilities. I'd known the pieces. I had not wanted to see the whole number. Patricia explained my options without selling me on any of them. She walked me through what each one meant in plain language. Debt consolidation was one path, taking out a personal loan at a lower interest rate to pay off higher rate debts. But my credit score had already dropped significantly. I was sitting around 591 on my FICO score, down from 710 18 months earlier. And qualifying for a consolidation loan at a meaningful rate would be difficult. A debt management plan through the credit counseling agency could lower my interest rates on the credit cards through agreements they'd negotiated with creditors and consolidate those into one monthly payment. But it wouldn't touch the medical debt or the student loans. Debt settlement, where you negotiate to pay less than you owe, was possible in theory on the medical debt. But it would likely tank my credit score further. The savings weren't guaranteed, and some settlement companies had fees that consumed much of what you saved. She strongly recommended I avoid for-profit settlement companies and, if I pursued settlement independently, to document everything. Bankruptcy was the other path. Patricia said she wasn't a bankruptcy attorney, and she encouraged me to consult one, but she explained the basics clearly. Chapter 7, Bankruptcy, she said, is a liquidation bankruptcy. It can discharge, meaning eliminate, most unsecured debts, including medical bills and credit card debt. It typically completes in 3 to 6 months. But you have to qualify based on income. There's a means test. and it appears on your credit report for 10 years. Chapter 13 is a reorganization bankruptcy. You propose a 3 to 5 year repayment plan based on what you can actually afford. You keep your assets, including your house. It appears on your credit report for 7 years. It can also allow you to catch up on mortgage arrears if you've fallen behind, and in some cases, it can address certain student loan situations. Student loans, she noted carefully, are generally not dischargeable in bankruptcy unless you can prove undue hardship, a high legal bar. But the medical debt, the credit cards, those could potentially be addressed. I can't tell you which path is right for you, Patricia said. That's why I'm going to give you a referral to a bankruptcy attorney who does free initial consultations. You need to talk to a licensed professional about your specific situation. What I can tell you is that you have real options. This is not... Please hear that. Whatever you are carrying right now, whatever number is sitting on your kitchen counter face down, there are licensed professionals who handle exactly this every single day. A nonprofit credit counselor, a bankruptcy attorney. These are not last resorts for people who have failed. They are resources that exist precisely because medical debt and financial crisis are not moral failures. They are things that happen to working people. Consult a licensed professional before making any decisions. That is not a disclaimer. That is the most important thing I can tell you. I made the appointment with the bankruptcy attorney Patricia referred me to. I brought every document. We spent an hour and a half together. He walked me through both chapters in detail as they applied to my specific income, my assets, my debt composition. Based on my income and household size, I was close to the line on the Chapter 7 means test. There was a possibility I could qualify. Chapter 13 was also a strong option, given that I had a mortgage I wanted to protect and income sufficient to make structured payments. We talked through both paths fully. I asked every question I'd been too afraid to ask anyone for 8 months. Of the consultation, he said something I needed to hear. He said, "Your credit score will recover. It always does, with time and intentional rebuilding. What won't recover is the next 5 years of your daughter's life. If you spend them crushed under debt you have no realistic path out of." Mia. I drove home that day, and I sat in my driveway for a few minutes before going inside. The trees on our street were starting to turn. It was early October, almost exactly 1 year after the night Janet had found me in the break room. I thought about the woman who had stood in her kitchen reading a $78,000 bill and believed she was alone in it. I went inside. Mia was at the kitchen table doing homework. She looked up. "Mom, you look different." "Do I?" "Yeah, less scared." "I'm still in process. I want to be honest with you. This story doesn't end with everything solved. The legal process takes time. Rebuilding a credit score takes time. There are still hard months ahead. But I am not white-knuckling it alone in the dark anymore. I have a plan, a real one, developed with licensed professionals who looked at my actual numbers. If you are sitting with a medical bill, or a collection notice, or a stack of unopened mail on your counter, I need you to know that getting help is not giving up. It is the bravest thing you can do for yourself and for the people who need you to still be standing. You are not behind because you failed. You are behind because something happened, and something can be done. Get the free debt checklist in the description. It walks you through how to organize your debts, what questions to ask a credit counselor or bankruptcy attorney, and where to find legitimate, non-profit help. Link is right below this video.